Welcome everyone to part 2 of our astrological overview for 2021 with 25 of the world's most outstanding evolutionary astrologers. Here's our schedule for today, day 2. Photos are courtesy of Brett Havis Photography. Thanks so much, Brett. And let's begin today's overview with Simon Vorster, Saturn Uranus Square 2021, dead or alive. Welcome, Simon. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Linda. Appreciate it. And just wanted to say thank you to you and everybody that contributed to creating this process, the 2-day experience, and throughout the entire year with the Zoom meetings. And I feel incredibly honored to be able to share my thoughts on this platform with everybody today, and of course for the video that will be watched by many, I'm sure. So the Saturn-Uranus square appeals to me in a very personal way, and I labeled it dead and alive because I saw something that I felt was important to share. And I just want to note that, of course, there are many different ways that this aspect can be interpreted. And so to try and keep it within the window that we have to talk about today, the approach that I'm going to take this transit through has to do with mental health, and what I sense and feel that this transit could contribute to a deeply overwhelming sense of societal change that can lead to a lot of unprocessed emotions arising to the surface. Aquarius as an archetype naturally correlates to where we have essentially experiences that are tremendously overwhelming to us, that we haven't been able to process, that are sitting around in our emotional field. And so I feel that this transit could bring to the surface a lot of material that is sort of stored away in parts of our psyche, parts of our emotional bodies. And so the experience of dead or alive to me speaks volumes to the relationship that we will have when these emotional charges do surface. Now, I think that with Saturn and Jupiter transiting through Capricorn, you would say, you know, gee, but we've already been working on all this emotional stuff as it is. And my sense of it is that's true. And that's why the alive part works here, because not every single body has had the opportunity to be able to work through some of the material that would have arisen during Saturn's transit through Capricorn, and particularly Jupiter's transit as well, as they not only conjuncted Pluto, and we had 3 phases throughout 2020 that were really intense to deal with. And I think for a vast majority of people on the planet, the experience of processing what Uranus and Taurus brought to the surface regards our relationship to COVID-19, and particularly a feeling of existential threat with many other experiences that are swirling around us at this time. Things like climate change as an example, and your relationship to that and how that feels. And so for most of us that's sitting here today, using astrology as a tool to be able to help process reality at this point in time, I feel that we're in a good position to a certain degree to be able to at least kind of have some cognition towards making sense of it. But I also sense that, and this is something that has been happening over the last week already, and I'm sure many of you are probably sharing a similar experience when it comes to a lot of people are finding out about astrology through emotional and psychological crises that are taking place in their life, and they're looking for information to try and make sense of it. And interestingly enough, one of the ways that that's materializing for people's lives is not necessarily looking outside of themselves anymore for material success or for material gain to be able to numb the pain, but something along the lines of, oh, you know, what is the purpose of my life really? And so Saturn and Uranus will make three exact squares with each other throughout 2021. The first one will happen on the 17th of February, just kind of putting this information out there. The second one will take place on the 14th of June. And the third one will take place on the 24th of December. And my sense of it throughout the 2021 will be not so much intensity in terms of Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, but I definitely think that looking at the phasal relationship that Saturn and Uranus has together, at the moment they are in a disseminating phase. And of course, when they actually hit the squares, they'll lead into a last quarter square. So they're disseminating into last quarter and then last quarter square. And from what I understand, what Jeffrey was talking about when he talked about these aspects, there's a tremendous amount of material that comes into our field of awareness, and we can feel that there's something that needs to change, but we're not fully aware as to what it is that actually is trying to come through. And so through my own direct experience of witnessing this type of transit in a person's life, or where that actually exists in the natal chart, it's very difficult to try, especially in the part of the square that is approaching the exact last quarter phase. So let me just be clear over here. So in case somebody didn't follow me, a last quarter square is 270 degrees, and it speaks to a crisis in consciousness. And essentially this energy is very Uranian by nature, okay? Yet what's interesting to me is that it's not a last quarter square exact unless you actually hit the points that I mentioned earlier, the three exact squares. And so energy prior to the last quarter square has got a Capricorn tone to it as well. And so you can see Saturn and Uranus having a conversation with each other, and yet Saturn is saying we need to kind of find structure that really supports a new way of doing things. And yet Uranus wants to say, no, we've got to kind of decentralize everything. So the nature of this energy itself, I feel, that has got a lot of instability with it. And Saturn's natural response to instability and chaos is create more rules, create more boundaries, create more structure. And I feel that within the container of our global mental health, experiences that are incredibly destabilizing can lead more to things like, what's the point in living? So the only way out seems to be things like suicide, as an example. And you can go to far lesser degrees, but I definitely feel that for anybody that's on this call today, that you're an astrologer and or are talking to somebody during 2021, and you notice that there is a tremendous amount of overwhelm that's taking place, particularly around the energy that is destabilizing itself, like changes taking place too rapidly for us to process. Because ironically, if you think about it in terms of Saturn is really ruling Uranus in the context of the square, so there's a necessary need to actually come into a more structured way of trying to process stuff emotionally. And yet these energies are, or at least Saturn is ruled by Uranus here. So I feel like it's very volatile. And again, like I said, information and material, subconscious material just arriving to the surface, and there's no context, there's no ability to process it. And so that leads to why I call this dead or alive, is because we can either disassociate from this experience, or detach and then disassociate and become more numbed out, because the experience of dealing with the pain is too much. B, there's no tools available for people in their own psychological state. And so more people who know that tools exist can be supportive to people that can begin to reach out and say, hey, if you need some help processing something, or if you just need somebody to kind of just sit with some of that pain, I'm available, So we're here to live and to be alive. But when we feel into our suffering, when we feel into our pain, when we feel into our material that is detached from and disassociated from, we're not alive, we're dead. And in that sense, there's no life force moving through us. And I feel that this energy has an intention to create life. And the way that it does that is by pointing at aspects within our emotional and psychological field that is essentially disassociated from, and it's going to bring it to the surface in ways that might not necessarily be fully comfortable and okay. And so I feel like 2021 is dealing with the after effects of 2020 and how we're going to interact with that. And I feel there can be definitely a kind of splitting that takes place between, I have nobody to help me with this. I don't have community. I feel disconnected from my family. I don't know anybody to talk to. So what's the point, kind of thing. So I'm not sure where we are in time here, Linda, but that's my small window of opportunity to talk about this aspect. And again, because there is a lot of energy in Aquarius with both social planets being there, again, social change and unrest is likely. And yet I think that the answer to that is not going to come necessarily through it's all going to work out. I feel that there is going to be more restrictions, more fear coming to the surface. And then Capricorn wants to control that fear by putting more oppressive structures in place. So hopefully on the more consensus level, when we see that and people are turning inward to try and figure out how to liberate themselves from these external experiences, that we're able to be at the front lines over there and to help people process through some material. So thanks very much for hearing me speak over there. I may not necessarily have been the most upbeat conversation, but something that I feel is really close to my heart with regards to this. And so hopefully that inspires some of you or many of you to hold a place in yourself in 2021 for those and yourself as well when that maybe comes up. Yes, okay. Thanks very much, Linda. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Simon. Okay, Timothy Halloran, but he hasn't entered the meeting just yet. He's sending me a message right now, so let's just wait a moment. Oh, he's trying to enter. Okay, well, we can come back to Timothy's talk when he gets into the meeting. So for now, let's move to, oops, mouse is sticking. Oh, gosh.
Hello, everyone. Michael Pinchera talking to you about beyond coping and thriving as a human being. Now, this is a theme of general importance for us all, but we now find ourselves going through a collective initiation, right? We've crossed a threshold where the lifestyles of nearly everyone on the planet are affected in various restrictive ways, which I don't need to go into. But what I refer to as generally important theme is now more in the limelight, a glaring one. And where I live here in Cuenca, Ecuador, lockdown came very quickly and nearly everything came to a halt for a time. In response, individuals both reacted and responded in various ways. And especially at the onset, how many Facebook and other social media posts did we see touting the drinking of alcohol, taking other drugs, near constant eating, or indulging in other sensual experiences to deal with boredom or maintain sanity? Now, this maintaining of comfort is an avoidance of pain and whatever unpleasant feelings and thoughts one may have or imagine to have. Avoidance of feelings, positive or negative, for maintaining security is recognized by the EA paradigm as unviable, as it leads us to not exercising our thinking and feeling capabilities, thus leading us to inaction. If our soul abilities are not exercised, we feel unfree, desperate, frustrated, without necessarily knowing why. Even so, karmic necessity and our soul intentions do exist, though we may stubbornly resist, yeah? And they will manifest, urging us, even running us over as we submit to the death that the archetypal Kali gives us. There are those who purposely take measures to keep their bodies healthy, thus freeing themselves from not only organic hindrances and physical addictions, but emotional dependencies as well. To the degree we overcome them, we free ourselves further. We have more energy, our minds are clear, our will is strengthened, and we feel better about ourselves. Whenever negative or purposeless habits of ours are replaced by positive and purposeful habits, we strengthen our life forces. We put order into our lives and strengthen self-esteem. When we start to master our feeling life, we enter into a new dimension of possibilities for ourselves. Mastering our feelings does not mean to suppress or deaden our feelings. When we accept our feelings and effectively understand how they affect our thoughts, moods, and actions, we can begin to develop equanimity in our feeling life. Whatever degree we develop equanimity in our feeling life is an evolutionary transformation of our soul and is reflected in peacefulness in our lives, which also affects the people, even animals and the environment around us. This peacefulness is a result of not being run by our feelings and emotions. Many practice mindful meditation, cessation of thinking, non-attached witnessing of thinking, and purposely focusing on a mantra or yantra. Now, these are age-old practices, which you may all know, and they have certain effects. For the modern human being, disciplines involving thinking must be carried out in full consciousness. Repetitions of mantras are most effective if there is a full understanding of the words involved. Sounds and rhythms do have power, but we must utilize them in wakeful consciousness. The more we thoroughly follow thoughts through, we strengthen our thinking muscles, as it were, and begin to enter into the spiritual reality and power of our own thinking. We move from having our thoughts come in willy-nilly to developing clarity of thought. In the harmony of feelings, habits, and physical nature, our power of thought opens up to perceiving more on imaginative, inspirational, and intuitive levels of perception. For each step we take in mastering our thinking, feeling, willing, we move forward to becoming more free and more truly human. Freedom isn't just about doing what we want to do, when and where we want to do it. Yeah, we must free ourselves from outer restrictions and definitions, and we must also recognize how we are controlled, determined, and defined by our own feeling, thought, and habit life. As we free ourselves from outer and inner factors, we transform our lives, and we evolve from just coping and maintaining our lives to living our lives more meaningfully and thriving with enthusiasm. So here we are with the means to become even more human. Yet we live in a world in which onslaughts against the development of human capacities are increasingly becoming enmeshed in our environment. Now, over 100 years ago, Rudolf Steiner noted how, since the advent of the technological age, that it was harder for the human being to be fully human, to be able to live out our fullest potential. Since then, there's obviously been advancements in technology, now electronic technology, and our world is now surrounded and permeated with ever more powerful electronic frequencies. The popular focus has been on the capabilities of these technological wonders, but little attention is given to studies on their effects on living organisms, especially over long periods of time. And even less heed has been given to its effects on consciousness. Even those who are doing scientific studies on the effects of electronic technologies on living organisms are widely ignored and even scoffed at. AI and transhumanism are other topics for which I don't have time to address right now. Technology aside, the pace and demands of modern life have also increased. Not only are we pressured to do more, we are pulled to attend to more things at once. We are inundated with tasks and information. Perhaps we can identify with Bilbo from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, when he states, I feel thin, sort of stretched like butter scraped over too much bread. We must be grateful for sleep, but our modern age, in our modern age, our life forces are used up more than ever before, and it takes much more deliberate activity to replenish ourselves. Also, our current times are increasingly rife with lies and confusion, even with issues and situations that are dire for everyone. Lies and agendas abound, yeah? And it's a struggle to be aware and stay above fear and worry. To find meaning in the context of one's feeling and thinking life is only half of the equation. How our lives interweave with others and the rest of the world gives the other half. Everyone carries the question about how to find freedom and strength in ourselves. And whether consciously or just in their feelings of dread or desperation for some sort of control and power. And as we become more conscious, we ask things like, how do I build a richer and more harmonious life for myself and for my relationships? Or will I ever become the person I've always wanted to be? At decisive crossroads and crises, we wonder why we have to experience such pain and difficulties, and wondering if there's any meaning in our suffering or in the suffering of others. Well, self-questioning and self-knowledge is the basis for healthy self-sustainment and further evolution, of course. And these questions arise out of a deeper consciousness pointing to our soul's intentions that pull us to become more than what we are at any particular time. Every moment of our lives, starting with the circumstances of our birth, even our conception, are part of our life's thread. And once we recognize this, we can feel grateful for the possibilities of evolution and find new energy and enthusiasm. Besides developing a spiritual practice and outlook, we can look at biographies, our own biography, from a spiritual perspective. It's possible to see that the rhythms in our life's unfolding are archetypal in nature and are internalized within us, unfolding in ways that are common to all, yet in accordance to our individual karmic needs and necessities. Every cycle has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has a developmental purpose in our lives. With the bigger picture in mind, we ask ourselves, where did I come from? Who am I? What am I going to do? And as we review each stage of our lives, we ask ourselves, how did this play out in my life? What have I learned about myself? How did my experiences manifest the intentions of a particular cycle? Did I fulfill what I was called to do? Or was there anything left undone and had to be developed or resolved later on, and possibly with more effort? Yeah. Through EA and biography work, we discover themes or threads running through our lives. These threads manifest differently during each cycle or phase. We naturally focus on and identify with what is most current or having the strongest impact on our lives. When we begin to see our experiences in life as connected threads, as well, when we see our lives as things connected, these threads emerge, showing how different experiences, no matter how insignificant, come together as facets of a central recurring life lesson. As our lives unfold, the things that motivate us and their sense of purpose change. Our family upbringing, schooling, social encounters, which culture and times we live in, all play a part to fulfill and balance out our karmic realities of our present life and previous lives, and to manifest our soul intentions. The Mayan group soul insight in Lakesh, you are another I, has new meaning in our time of individual consciousness. The more we grow as individuals, we become more aware of others. When we learn about others' lives and develop interest in them, we reflect on our own lives and we can gain self-objectivity. We not only encounter another through their story, we encounter ourselves. Now, it's important to share our stories with one another. Whenever we do, we are left enriched, edified, and our hearts and minds expand, possibly in shocking ways. And we feel unified in how our lives are relatable, no matter how different they seem to be. Now, more than ever, we need each other. And from a certain perspective, we are in infancy in developing a healthy social life. This impulse is expressed in Steiner's motto of the social ethic, which I'll now say. The healthy social life is found when, in the mirror of each human soul, the whole community finds its reflection, and when, in the community, the virtue of each one is living. With this, I will end this with wishing all of you deeply meaningful experiences and growing love in your hearts. Until next time, love to all.
Okay, Timothy, are you there? Hello, go ahead, please, Timothy.
Hello, hello. Can you hear and see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about the technical issue. Thanks to Michael or whomever needed to switch with me. Appreciate it. So I'm talking about Neptune being square to the moon's nodes, which is fairly exact right now. The moon's nodes will be exactly square to Neptune at the beginning of January. But this was a big player in our recent eclipses, and this is going to take us through the first half of 2021. So whenever a planet is square to the moon's nodes, this in evolutionary astrology is generally referred to as a skipped step. And we can experience collective skipped steps as well. And when a planet is square to the moon's nodes, it is also more distant from the plane of the ecliptic. So there tends to be a theme of disassociation. There tends to be developmental issues that tend to come up whenever a planet is square the moon's nodes. And it's an opportunity to explore those dynamics and issues with this planet, as well as an opportunity to integrate this planet, to explore the potential of this planet. And so when we're talking about Neptune, we're talking about how we connect and relate to the deeper sense of meaning and purpose in terms of our life, in terms of how we are connected to the whole. And so we're really exploring this deeper, you could say, spiritual significance at this time, but this doesn't have to necessarily be conscious. This can simply be an unconscious or a felt experience. And we can see this very much on the world, throughout the planet at this time, where this can be a theme of collective chaos or collective psychosis. And that is because, again, Neptune square the moon's nodes can bring up this disassociation from meaning or purpose. Neptune can be that deepest sense of what fulfills us, what gives us, again, a sense of meaning by being connected to something bigger than just ourself. And so while Neptune square the moon's nodes, we may even have a feeling of aimlessness or a feeling of the void, a general meaninglessness. And so this can also be a collective experience. As we all know, we're in this time of significant shift. 2020 was a very heavy, a very depressing, exploring the underworld, digging up these deeply conditioned patterns extending into past ages, having to do with societal oppression. And now we're suddenly flipping gears into Aquarius, where everything's very fast moving, everything's very progressive, everything's very chemically reactive and charged. And this can be tied to this Neptune square the moon's nodes. It can be a tremendous period of overwhelm. There can be so much to process that this theme of what gives us a tether or a root to our center is this Neptune nodal theme. So Neptune, again, is that which gives us this deeper centering, this deeper tether in such times where there is all of this transformation and intensity and death. And so the feeling of the void, the experience of overwhelm, you know, this is a familiar experience for highly Pisces souls. It's like being a leaf, you know, blown around in the winds of the world, you know, just being drifted here or there by all of this chaos that's on the outside. So we're all dealing with this in a certain sense. We're all looking at how are we being affected by the outside world? How are we being affected by the collective? When we have that feeling of meaninglessness, when we have that experience of the void, what do we cling to? What are fillers that we grab to bring in a sense of meaning? And we're having to discern, you know, whenever there's a planet square the moon's nodes, we're really called to discern the function of this planet. Is it real or is it deceptive? Is this Neptune square? Is this a real sense of myself that gives me this center and meaning, or is this a distraction, or is this an escape? And of course, when we have this feeling of being blown around, when we have this lack of center, what we grab onto to fill up instinctively, unconsciously, you know, our addictions, this is what we're exploring at this time. With Neptune square the nodes, all of the above themes can also call an awareness to our natural sensitivities. Again, we're looking at how are we being affected by the outside? How are we being affected by that, by the collective? You know, Neptune really does have this collective, stormy, you know, oceanic quality and feeling. And this is something that we're all experiencing, particularly those of us who are sensitive to the collective. And so how do we cope with those sensitivities? How do we use those sensitivities? We're being called to look at the issues of boundaries, therefore, with Neptune square the nodes. What are we open to and what are we closed to? And I think that really brings up also this fundamental dynamic, again, of belief, of faith, that which we are tethered to on a deeper level. You know, it's again, that will in a certain way discern and create experience dependent on what we are open to or closed to, even our belief in our understanding of how we relate to the collective, how we relate to that deeper sense of purpose and meaning. So again, Neptune brings up a lot of really profound, really deep, and also kind of enigmatic, you know, murky, tricky, mysterious, difficult to discern, but really fundamental to our life qualities to the surface, these dynamics. There is an opportunity at the same time to be in touch with Neptune, to be forming a personal connection with Neptune, to be in tune with that otherly world, maybe in a time where, you know, that is hard to anchor, you know, while there's all of this collective chaos, where there's all of this, you know, disinformation and debate and confusion collectively. The simple space holding, you know, by being anchored into this deeper meaning and connection in ourselves, there's an opportunity for that, even if it's not totally understood, or even if it is mysterious. This is a highly experimental time that we're entering now with Jupiter and Saturn in a new phase in Aquarius. So again, this can also be a part of the confusion, but a part of the opportunity to explore our sensitivities, to explore our connection to the whole, and how we can be forming our ideas and beliefs, the moon's nodes in Gemini Sagittarius polarity, that forms a healthier connection to our own center and how we are related to the world around us. So let me know if there's any more time here.
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, let's see if anything else springs to mind here. Well, certainly another collective theme, though it can be a little bit more negative, can be the, in the theme of sensitivity and disassociation and addiction and escapism, can also be the theme of suicide. It really goes hand in hand with the exploration of what is the purpose of life, what is what is our orientation to the whole. And I think on a deeper level, although again, this can be a dynamic that we're witnessing collectively, is this type of, escapism or the overwhelm of life itself being too much to bear. In which case, again, us anchoring this Neptune in our own center, this spiritual connection in our own life is really essential in being a lifeboat for others as well, providing this type of support to sensitive souls in times of collective chaos. But on a deeper level than this Neptune square, the nodes, really brings up the question, what is the point of life? What is the purpose? Does it really matter? Does it have greater significance? Is it really something that reflects the core purposes of beauty and nature and humanity and, what life is really all about? Because each and every one of us does have the free will and the creative potential to create worlds. And instead of it being like there are people creating totally disassociated worlds and people that are, perfectly creating, naturally oriented worlds, getting back to nature, we tend to be somewhere in this spectrum in between. And again, this is what we're really exploring right now, is how much of what is meaningful is bringing us into our center in a healthy way, so we can provide this type of support to others and have this sense of fulfillment, have this sense of being full in a way that is grounded in nature, is grounded in, authentic spirit, and therefore can be like a fountainhead that we can use to share and connect with others. How about now?
Okay, thank you so much, Timothy.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate participating.
Okay, our next speaker is Amanda Moreno with Venus retrograde in Capricorn. Welcome, Amanda. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's participating, everyone who's spoken, everyone who's attending. This is always such a great kind of like end of one year and beginning of the next. So I'm going to riff just a bit on Venus retrograde in Capricorn, which actually starts at the end of 2021 and then goes into 2022. And I'll start with the personal layers, but then as I go into how this might impact or how this interfaces with the chart of the United States, I will be talking a little bit about astrology of 2022 as well. So last time Venus was retrograde in Capricorn was December 21st, 2013 to January 31st, 2014. So if you want to reflect a bit on what was going on for you then, you might see some themes or get some clues as to what to expect. And so Venus will be retrograde starting December 19th of 2021, and then stationing direct on January 29th of 2022. So it's involving the range of Capricorn between 11 and 26 degrees. And you can see on this slide the full list of when to expect the pre-retrograde shadow and post-retrograde shadow as well. So what is Venus retrograde? It's something that happens every 18 months or so, with the last one being this past May and June in Gemini. And it's a time when we're invited to reflect on Venusian themes and do inner work around personal values and needs and feelings. So there's a lot of emotional content that can come up, and relationships, and that's relationships to ourselves, the body, soul, and spirit levels, and then to others and the earth itself. And I pulled a quote out of Pluto Volume 2 that I think encapsulates it very well. Venus retrograde is a very significant time for all individuals on Earth because it will correlate to a time frame in which we must re-examine and reflect on the overall nature of reality. And I think that's underscored particularly with Capricorn. The intention in this is to become aware of what we no longer need in our lives, the dynamics or circumstances that are now counterproductive to our need to grow and move forward. At the same time, it creates an awareness of what we do need in order to move forward. It can also correlate to a time in which we re-experience old issues or dynamics that we may have felt that we have already worked through or left behind. So with Venus retrograde in Capricorn specifically, some major themes might be looking at the ways that hierarchy and power affect our relationships and how hierarchy and power exist within our relationships. Looking at the ways we've been conditioned to expect certain things in our relationships. Reevaluating notions of failure in relationship. It's a good time for exploring walls that we've built up due to guilt and shame and potentially making some progress there. It's a great time to explore why we do relationships the way we do, why we want what we want. And then another thing would be exploring repressed feelings and responses to ways we've had to or have chosen to conform. So I think, high notes of Venus retrograde in Capricorn could be getting in touch with inner authority, inner power, inner agency, and then really examining how parental and societal conditioning and imprinting has shaped our expectations around love and relationship. So Venus retrograde in Capricorn at its essence is kind of helping us to understand the ways our feeling nature and our emotional energy, which are, lunar themes, but also Venusian themes as well, are tied to the world around us. And that's in terms of the earth element for this round. So our material reality, and then the structures and institutions that make up our society. By house in the natal chart, so where it's traveling in your chart, will give you an area of life to focus on potentially, or an area of life where you might be excavating some really deeply repressed material or feelings or shadow stuff, hopefully with a lot of gentleness, which is that Cancer polarity. And then, there's the conventional understanding of Venus retrograde as well, which is that there's a potential for old relationships to return. And it's a time when we might be working through big bursts of relational karma. And there can be a kind of underworld feel to Venus retrograde. And that might be a little, related to the condition of Venus in your natal chart. So that's always a good thing to pay attention to as well. Historically speaking, Venus retrogrades in Capricorn often see themes of women and power or women in power. So for example, in the 1998 version, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became the first president of Liberia and the first elected female head of state in Africa. In 2006, Prince Charles announced he'd marry Camilla. And actually, the reason that I wanted to talk about this, the reason that I chose this as my topic is because as I started kind of working with charts of the next year, I noticed that this Venus retrograde period sees Venus revisiting that oh so familiar to us at this point, 23-degree Capricorn area. So that's the degree of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And we all know that late cardinal has been home to a lot of action this year. Jupiter and Saturn spending so much time in that area throughout 2020, and then Mars and Aries squaring that range from September to November, or actually the last 6 months of this year. So, keeping in mind that Venus revisits this exact same part of the zodiac every 8 years, so that's not necessarily new. We also know that at this point, we're really super attuned to this part of the zodiac. And to me, this is probably an indication that we will be revisiting some of our pandemic related themes at the end of next year during this Venus retrograde. So, you know, I always think of Venus as a healing force, and perhaps she's coming into the picture to kind of do some cleanup work. As Jeffrey said in that quote that I read, Venus retrograde is often a time where we're working through stuff that we thought we had already been through or that we'd left behind. And I think even looking at that period, not astrologically, not through the astrological lens, it would make sense that by this time next year, we'll have more clarity around things like how long vaccines last, or whether they're, you know, how long immunity to the virus lasts once a person has had it. How long the body keeps making antibodies after sickness. And we could, you know, potentially be seeing a resurgence of COVID, much like we see resurgences of the common cold and flu at this time of year, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. We'll also have a year of understanding what infrastructures really need to be updated. There's that Capricorn material again, due to what we're learning from the pandemic. And, you know, furthermore, I'd anticipate that this retrograde period coincides with some kind of fundamental reevaluation of our economic systems and our political and social infrastructures. So that's definitely a recurring theme that we see reflected in the Uranus Saturn square as well, the potential for further breakdown and rebuilding of those structures, but there seems to be, again, an emphasis here. And bringing that up a notch and taking it into territory that is very United States centric, we notice that Venus stations retrograde almost exactly conjunct the 27-degree Capricorn Pluto in the chart of the United States. So many of you know that the United States is in the process or leading up to its exact Pluto return, while also experiencing Saturn conjunct its 6-degree Aquarius South node in 2021. So to say that a soul-making process for this country is underway is probably an understatement. So during the retrograde, Venus stations direct on the United States Pluto, and then comes back through the 23-degree mark of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And then when Venus stations direct at 11 degrees of Capricorn, and she's kind of, you know, at slowest movement and holding still in the sky, Mars comes and catches up with Venus for a conjunction. And so then the two of them will travel forward. And at this time, Mercury is also retrograding into late Capricorn. So Venus and Mars come forward and conjunct transiting Pluto and the United States Pluto at 27 degrees, and then move forward together to conjunct the United States South node before separating again. So what does that all mean? TBD, to be determined, probably more than the 10 minutes will allot for in discussion, but I thought it was some really fascinating symbolism, and as always, a great opportunity to really remember to work with astrology really consciously. And I guess in short, it would be, you know, a great time to remember to consciously call in the Cancer polarity, right? So reflecting on the nature of our personal condition and its emotional implications, and putting more emphasis on rest and gentleness, like really, you know, listening to the limits of our flesh suits. We can focus on healing the wounds caused by societal and parental familial imprinting by extending unconditional compassion to ourselves, and feeling what needs to be felt, reaching out for support. And, you know, Venus retrograde is often thought of as a really personal thing, and I'm sure that there will be elements of that this round, but there's also a very collective energy to this particular Venus retrograde. And so I think it'll be particularly important to keep the bigger picture in mind. And we have here an opportunity to participate in the evolution of our relationship with the structures of society itself. So at the collective level, it's really asking us to revisit the concept of civic responsibility and understanding how we're all connected. And the US in particular is not only involved in a soul-making process right now, coming into right relationship with power, hopefully, but a maturation process too. So Venus retrograde in Capricorn will underscore how vital it is that we accept where we are and then create new structures that will see us into a world where all living beings are supported and given what they need to thrive, and where our relationship with ourselves and the earth is sustainable, and where we treat our, our bodies and the body of the earth as sacred and vital. That's all for now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, our next speaker is Helena Garcia with Asteroid Goddesses Lighting the Future, Psyche, Amazon, and Ceres on the North Node. Hi there, Helena, go ahead.
Hi, Linda. I'm going to first second Simon and thank you to you and to everyone that has this amazing work to do, the EA Zooms that are a tremendous gift to EA and to everyone that wants to listen. And I'm also grateful for the invitation. Well, I think it might not come as a surprise to everyone that I'll be speaking about the asteroid goddesses conjuncting the North Node in 2021. But this subject actually came to me by accident when I noticed that the asteroid Psyche, which is, I love Psyche, I love Psyche's myth, and I love Psyche's story, is conjuncting the North Node beginning in 2020. And this transition is going to be ending with the last conjunction on 2021. So from here, I realized that well, these goddesses, they really are very good symbols, very important symbols for us to look for guidance and light and messages on the affairs to come. And I found out that this particular year of 2021, we will have Psyche, Amazon, and Ceres conjuncting the North Node. So for me, I would see these conjunctions to the North Node in Gemini and noticing that Gemini is making trines to all the planets that are transiting Aquarius, not only Jupiter and Saturn, but also the south node of Neptune. And they are also squaring Neptune. And I think they are tremendous opportunities. The last slide, Linda, please. And I think they are tremendous, if you can move, yeah, thank you. If they are tremendous opportunities to rewrite not only her story, but kind of feel it like it is our true story. How can we go back to that south node in Sagittarius and express it to Gemini? And looking at these asteroids, they do present us with important messages that I would sum up this way. Psyche, and they conjunct the North Node in this order, so they don't overlap. Psyche and Amazon and Ceres all come after one another by this order. And I think that we can sum up the messages that they bring. For Psyche, it's a message, she's a rebel, and for her, it's a message of radical soul search and a radical self-love. And for Amazon, she brings us the message that we need to let the inner warrior speak. And when the inner warrior speaks, you'll actually fight for the collective truth. And for Ceres, the Great Mother, she will invite us to reunite with her and share the blessings of an earth-centered spirituality. So for the next slide, I reunited the transits. The next slide, Linda, please. Thank you. I reunited the transits that we had this year with the conjunctions to the North Node. And what I think it's most impressive, if we think this is a year that we spent confined in our homes, to have Vesta, the goddess of the fire in the center of the home, conjuncting the North Node it's very self-explanatory. We also have Pallas conjuncting the South Node, and I think this Pallas here probably gave us messages in February about how we should proceed with the year to come, and some people probably acted on those messages. Sophia is a very important asteroid that I would consider, and I would encourage everyone interested to search for. Sophia is pretty much Sophia is Mother Wisdom, and I really like the fact that she appears here. And there's this little book called it's a book from 86. It's called Sophia: The Future of Feminist Spirituality, that actually suggests that Sophia and all spirituality that embraces the feminine to a need to struggle against oppression and suffering, and also to a collective recognition that suffering and oppression exist, and that we human beings are responsible for them. So I would see Sophia as a very important asteroid for this year, the past year, the years to come on these subjects, and of course Lilith. That conjuncted the nodes and went retrograde and moved forward in the galactic center, and we had women in the United States, first woman vice president, first woman of color. And in relative to Lilith, I would like to leave a special note on the Mars-Lilith conjunction that was in February at 19 Sagittarius, that is now activated by the transit of the south node of the moon until 2021. And this happens while there is a new phase of conjunction with Pluto and Lilith that happened a few hours ago today. And that for me is a great message of time for soul root reconnection within the sacredness of the feminine. And with that, I leave you a synchronicity of an headline that I saw. Well, this headline is from yesterday at 9:30 p.m. So it was right after the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. It was from The Guardian, and it said, "A woman forced into domestic slavery and marriage was freed after 40 years. 40 years. I think this is one of the messages that we probably are going to see. I hope that we are probably going to see coming more in 2021. So for the next slide, we have all the conjunctions of 2021 to the nodes. I'll speak more about particularly about Psyche, Amazon, and Ceres. And I like to point out that Juno is going to conjunct the South Node 3 times this year, and then Vesta. And these conjunctions are going to be very important, the relationship that I have with Psyche, Amazon, and Ceres. So for Psyche, in the Psyche chart conjunction of 2021, if you can move to the next slide, Linda. Thank you, Linda. We have a conjunction of Psyche is, I think everyone knows the myth in all the versions, but Psyche is a rebel at core. I specifically love her because she is the one that is on a soul retrieval. And let's look at the year that we had. Everyone had the opportunity to be with themselves, for sure, and everyone probably was in some sort of soul retrieval this year. And the culmination of this conjunction, it's especially interesting that it happens when Jupiter and Mercury are in a new phase conjunction, and Jupiter and Mercury are the rulers of the South Node and the North Node. So it just suggests to me that we are going to have some new messages coming up relative to our own souls, a soul reconnection that we can probably have been achieving and will be in effect by next year. and I like specifically the story of Psyche, and I like this chart relative to that story, because she was a rebel that got herself into trouble 2 times, and she is more or less a bit the Pluto-Mars interface, the one that goes into the desires of the soul in an unconscious mode, and then has to do it, and then it puts herself into this journey with a lot of crisis, a lot of things to do, a lot of ordeal. And then she, by the end of that journey, she decided to be a rebel again and not do what it was told. And she also is a story about confused perception. She enters the underworld. So the story starts with Psyche opening the light on her lover. She had this amazing life. She had this amazing love, and she never saw him. So she starts the journey thinking that she needs to prove this love, and she did something wrong. And she she ends the journey very tired with everything done. She decided, well, I have this gift to give to Aphrodite, and it's a beauty ointment. I'm tired and I am worn out, and I'm just going to take it for myself. And for me, I think that seeing Uranus in Taurus, ruling all the planets in Aquarius, it's a beautiful way to see this story and the need that we have to take care of ourselves if we want to have a role in any kind of relationship that is whole and where our soul is whole. What I think is also very important about this chart, if you see, you have Eros, so it's Psyche's lover, opposed Psyche, conjunct the South Node and conjunct Juno. That for me would say that it's very important that if we arrive at this phase and we decide to look for ourselves, that we observe the ways that we go into any kind of relationship, any group relationship, any tribe, and see that if we are honoring our true self, the new self that we found in this journey, and if we are entering any relationship with a sense of equality, I think that is really important. And then move on to Amazon. She is, sorry, Linda.
Just letting you know that you have 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, I'm closing. So Amazon, I think it's very important to have her here because she's a warrior, and well, she happens to be conjunct the North Node when Psyche is conjuncting Mars in the last degrees of Gemini. And that for me means that we need to speak up. We need to tell our truths. We need to probably be very self-sufficient in those relationships, those new communications that will go, and those new ideas, because the ruler of all of this is in Taurus, conjunct Venus and conjunct the Sun and conjunct Uranus. So it suggests that not only in our personal relationships this needs to come out, our truth needs to be spoken, but also I wouldn't be very surprised to see a lot of real Amazon examples of women in authority positions with the Saturn trine. Then for Ceres conjunction, I think it will end the year beautifully, letting us know that the next chart, Linda, letting us know that thank you, Linda, that the real goal for this year is that we sorry, the other one, that the real goal for this year is that we reconnect with nature. We recognize the need to be with nature, and to put nature, as Kristen also said in the first in the first presentation, to put nature in the center of our intentions and of our actions. And I think the beautiful grand trine, air grand trine between Ceres and Venus in Libra and Saturn in Aquarius really speak about that possibility that we find some solutions. And I think we probably will put that into question in the second conjunction with that Mars in the last degree of Scorpio and squaring Jupiter. So that for me is all about the new ideas that we have. How are we going to integrate them in a greater perspective and respecting natural law? And I'll end with a suggestion of a book. This is, in fact, a North Node in Gemini, and I think we need books, and I think we need books to stay away from our phones and to make greater connections to also to our souls. And there's this great book published by the School of Evolutionary Astrology that just came out. It's called Series Recovering Your Soul Within Nature. I'll go with this one. And I put book, and I think we should probably not only have an EA Zoom with videos, but probably do also a book recommendation for the 2021. That would be very nice, I think. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Helena. Okay, our next speaker is Zhou with Jupiter, Saturn, Aquarius, plus Uranus, Taurus, Decondition and Liberation from Love Vibration. Go ahead, Wei, please.
Thank you, Linda. Just a little background of the transiting of 2021. Pluto is still in Capricorn, and the South Node transiting in Sagittarius. Both of the ruler would be Saturn and Jupiter entering the sign of Aquarius. And the Uranus will continue transiting in the sign of Taurus. This speaks to me like what of our past imprints or past trauma on personal level, also collective level, like we are ready to bring to the present moment to be processed, also liberated. So our personal life is ever more intertwined with the collective currents. And we can feel the transiting energy is impacting us on the emotional and energetic level very intensely. The planetary energy interacts with our consciousness, but they're not creating our reality or in any sense controlling our destiny. I feel it's our reaction to this intense planetary energy that sets the tone of the reality we are creating. A lot of times we may feel powerless or victimized by this intense transit or very traumatic events. It is because we focus on very limited views of those experiences. Also within that victimized sense, we actually identify only very small part of ourselves as a soul. When we are experiencing a very difficult situation, the instinct desire is to escape and avoiding this exact situation. Also, the emotions being triggered in this circumstances. That this reaction actually keep us in the fear and the powerless vibration. From this state, any action we're trying to make to get us out of there are actually fear-based. It's from a powerless sense. So the reality we create, the action we take based on this frequency is only leading us to repeating our past dynamics. That's based on fear, based on the past traumatic imprints. So eventually it's the fear that really trapped us. Because the exact difficult situation are designed by our soul to pressure us enough to focus within, find our inner power, inner strength, wisdom, and infinite potential. So the point when we are being triggered is really not to escape, but try to be in the situation, be centered, be grounded within your body, to realign our vibration into a more self-care and self-love frequency. And this is the change we have total power and total control of to make. Only from this new love-based vibration, then we are able to develop a new perspective or make decisions, take actions that align with our soul's inner truth, inner reality. And only from that state, the actions we take can lead us to truly decondition and liberate from old trauma-based patterns and imprints. And this inner shift is the lesson and needs to happen before our daily reality can shift. So in a way, yes, we are going through a very difficult time, a very intense energy going on collectively. So many times we are not able to just magically change our situation to get out the feelings it's just so painful. But because just to remember, because this exact feeling and the situation has perfect elements and pressure to purge and transform our inner dynamic, inner reality. So this is really the point of going through any difficult life experiences. And in the year of 2021, we have very potent Aquarius energy. This energy is teaching us and really give us opportunity to open our mind to see reality in a different way. My favorite quality of Aquarius is that we are energetic beings. We always exist in multi-dimensions, and on energy level, we always travel through time and space, interacting with our past, also our future self at every present moment. So try to imagine at every traumatic situation, the savior you are searching for or the rescue you are waiting for is actually your future self who already went through these experiences you are in now, then able to be awakened into a more loving and more empowered vibration. But for you to get there is exactly to be in the present moment, to remind yourself, align with the love vibration, especially self-love in the present moment. And this exact difficult circumstances is the way, is the path designed by our soul to pressure you enough, at the same time inspire you enough to change your perspective, expand your consciousness, also expand the sense of self to be able to align with your soul's vision, to see every life situation differently. It's from that frequency then you are able to see beyond duality choices, which is either to escape, fight against the situation, or to stay in suffering in a very powerless way to accepted reality. But when you are able to identify with a larger part of your soul and see the situation from the expanded view, you will start to sense a new choice is to focus within at any, even you feel impossible situation, how to feel worthy, how to love yourself and nurture yourself the best you can. Once you started kind of like train your mind to switch this instinct reaction to fear, then you can be centered in this inner love and peace vibration to feel whole and complete within yourself every time being triggered. Eventually, through time, this state will become your inner reality. And from this inner reality, inner vibration, your action naturally will empower you and liberate you from the trauma or traumatic past. The ruler of Jupiter and Saturn is Uranus, transiting in the sign of Taurus. In EA, we know Taurus is a sign correlates to self-care, self-worth, self-love, also value system. So when we can combine the magic of Taurus and Uranus, the power of love or self-love is really the key. It's the frequency you can travel through time and space to heal yourself on an energetical level. You can be at the present moment, sending this love to your past through your soul's timeline to heal any past trauma. Also to heal the future by stop creating reality from this trauma-based imprints, by rewriting your future in the love new vibration. It is this inner shift from fear to love, from control to trust, from separation to connection. You become the savior you're waiting for. To search outside yourself is really a misunderstanding of your soul's guidance. The power, the wisdom you feel that you are lacking is actually the potential you already have, being shown by your future self, ready to be discovered, recognized and expressed into the human condition, the human dimension. And when enough individuals heal at this personal level, align with love vibration, we heal our self-worth and transform our inner value system, which were deeply wounded and distorted through the whole human history. Only when we can genuinely care and love ourselves, see ourselves as valuable, as enough, can we transform our value system on social scale, collective level. We each will upload this new perspective into Jupiter-Saturn collective consciousness, also grounding this new love-based vibration into co-creating our Earth reality. And through time, we heal the relationship with nature, with each other, and we are able to use technologies to nurture our home Earth, to advance our society in a harmony way with nature and with each other. This is all my topic today. I'm really grateful to be here, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Wei.
Hi, everybody. This is Barbara Yuruvich Arias with Deep Journeys, and I'm pre-recording this session on the topic of the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. This is how I got Uranus in the mix. It is Saturday, December 19th at 5 p.m. in Denver, Colorado, and we are a few days from the conjunction. So Jupiter and Saturn are usually called the social planets, and their synodic cycle correlates with changes in the culture, in the economics. They kind of flavor the next 20 years and then the next bigger cycle that you're part of. They're also referred to as the Star of Bethlehem or the Star of Christmas when they conjunct, we can see them in the sky as one star. So they have a synodic cycle of 20 years. They conjunct in 20 years, then in 10 years we have the opposition, and 10 years later we will have another conjunction in the same element in a different sign, moving counterclockwise. And they will do this conjunction, opposition, conjunction, opposition, conjunction, opposition, creating an hexagram. They will move what is called a triplicity. They will move around the zodiac, changing elements in a different sign and creating a beautiful triangle. This kind of triplicity or cycle that moves around the same element takes about 240 years. And together with the conjunction and the oppositions, they create an hexagram. And what do we find on Saturn's North Pole? An hexagram. And if you were to stand on the sand, which we cannot, but if you could, and you were to watch the dance of Jupiter and Saturn together, you would see how they form the hexagram. which was like the shape that I was trying to make here. And an hexagram, if we blow it into 3-dimensional or 3D, it becomes a double tetrahedron, which is the structure of reality. It's everywhere. It's a pattern of the universe. So food for thought there, how everything is numbers, geometry, and the hand of God is everywhere. The Fibonacci sequence is there, the golden mean, but this is a tale for another time, as we do not have a lot of time right here. So the 240-year period will be in what element at the very end of those 240 years? It will start to mutate into the next element, like we saw in the last conjunction in the air element in the 1980, 1981. That was the first conjunction in an air element, air sign, kind of leading us out of the earth element and into the air element. An entire great mutation cycle, which is the conjunctions going through all of the elements, take about 960 years, a millennia, if you will. And there are about 12 to 13 triplicities in the whole cycle. Again, these numbers are very important, and I'm just going to leave it there for you, food for thought. So that we are in a transitional time is an understatement. I think we can all see that, even if you disregard astrology. It is just felt and perceived. Even if you don't believe in any of this, you can sense the difference. You can sense how we are being birthed. So whether this is heralding the age of Aquarius or not, I am not sure. I do not believe that there is just one moment when we stop being in one age and we jump into the next. I think it's a process, and that we are in it, and that we have been in it for a while, and that we will continue to be in it, and it's accelerating as we move out of it, out of the previous age. We've been doing earth elements for a long time. We're transitioning into a 240 years of air, and I think this will definitely take us into the age of Aquarius, and that this conjunction is just another step further into that direction of the new age. With the earth element, you can trace the first conjunction back to around the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and if you kind of see how far we've come and how much we've mined the earth and pillaged its resources for our advancement, and also how much wisdom we have acquired about earth, we can kind of see how at the very end of the earth cycle, in the 1980s, we get the first air conjunction, and computers, personal computers appear. 10 years later, the opposition, 1990s, the World Wide Web, and it goes on like that. So our computers are made from earth resources that need minerals that we need to mine for, to have them working. The same with our phones. So in a way, we can see how our earth resources from the earth wisdom, from the earth element, is kind of helping the new element come in, the technological advancement that we are going to continue to see. We are becoming highly technological. Our virtual neural network continues to expand as we're all more and more tied up to our devices, to our machines, while we're all locked down at home. This will definitely create a different economy, a different society, a different way in which we relate with each other, and a different culture. It already is doing it. I think we will look up and beyond our solar system, and we will become galactic beings again, just like we once were, if you are to believe that we come from cycles and cycles of evolution. The smartest people in our world, in our planet, are already working, getting really close to being able to manage and control gravitational fields. The implications of this are immense, in just the same way that when we learned to control and manage electromagnetic fields back in the day, look how far we've come. This is the reason why I'm able to do this meeting, to record this meeting, and you will be able to watch it some other time. It is because of our knowledge of the electromagnetic field. So those are just things that I think are going to continue to expand our technology, our advancement. There is the risk of us becoming extremely mechanical, extremely heady, extremely mental, just going out there. We need to remember to bring our earth wisdom with us, just like some of us do when we put Shanghai pyramids or next to our computers to fend off the IMF, protect us from the radiation. It's not about stopping or stalling technological advance. For all of those of you that are really fighting against IMF and all these other things, I just don't think there is any stopping this. We are going to continue into that direction. We just need to bring the Earth wisdom and have Earth help us in this launching forward and out of our solar system. On the other side of Aquarius is also Leo, the heart. We need to remember to keep it warm, to stay connected with our childlike attitude, with fun, with our creativity. We cannot get lost in the numbers. That is that danger that we may continue to lose freedoms, private individual freedoms, on the sake of the common good, like we are already seeing. This may expand, and during this or after this conjunction in the next cycle, since Jupiter really expands everything that touches, and Saturn in Aquarius can definitely lead to structures that will be built based on our technology, based on this new way of relating, and based into this common good that sometimes can really squash the individual. So we need to remember to keep that, keep the polarity. It's always about a polarity and an integration of both. Saturn and Pluto are quite opposite to each other. Saturn it's dry, it's cold, it constrains, it restricts, and Jupiter is wet, it's expansive, it's exaggerates, it magnifies. So those two together produce enough friction, is the marriage of the opposites, to create this new culture, this new society. And in Aquarius, I know we all feel kind of relieved that we're getting all of that emphasis in Capricorn kind of moving out of there. But remember, Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn in traditional astrology. So we're still having a Saturnian influence. We're still going to feel some of that, and the way that it can manifest is in collective trauma, riots, fighting, becoming really activist for a cause of the common good, like we saw back in March, April, when Saturn dipped into Aquarius. We could see this again, and we could continue to see this. I mean, we can express all the shadow aspects, and we're very good at it, or we can really use this energy and how we're moving into this next Aquarian age, because we're getting further and further into it. At some point, we will be there. And my hope for humanity is that we are able, as we go out and beyond our planet, that we find and finally realize that the whole of the universe works under a unified theory, a unified language of music, geometry, harmonics, numbers. And this unites all of us, and that the entire universe works in a feedback loop, that we cannot continue to grow in a vertical line that goes upwards, that leads to extinction, that leads to exhaustion. There's nothing feeding the system. We clearly didn't realize that by just observing Earth. My hope is that maybe when we go out there and we find out that everything out there is just the same as it is here, fractals upon fractals, same patterns, same systems, same recycling feedback loop, that we finally get the aha of this is how we're supposed to do it. And we come back here and we bring this new humanity. I think my 10 minutes just went up, and I am at the very end wrapping up, so I do not want to take more time. I hope you enjoy this. Blessings, happy conjunction, happy 2021, and blessings to all. Thank you. Thank you, Linda.
And thank you, Barbara. Next, we have a musical interlude with Marty Dixon. Are you there, Marty? Marty?
I am here.
Okay.
I am here.
Over to you. Marty?
And yes, and I do not have that music on my end.
Well, you wanted to speak for a moment.
Oh, okay, sure.
Remember?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I can do that. Okay, I just want to say it's incredible how so many people are saying the same thing. I want to thank all of the speakers, all of our audience, and our fearless leader, Linda Johnson, for her tireless efforts and her vision and for bringing us all together. We have so many stories, and it's all becoming one teaching at some point. And we didn't compare notes. We didn't talk before this presentation, but somehow we're all on the same path, the same level. And I think that's truly astounding, because I think that truth has the same fundamental underpinnings. And if we consider the Hermetic teachings of as above, so below, it's just another way of saying the same thing that traditional people say in their prayer to the 7 directions when they talk about the heaven and the earth and the 4 directions and the inner self. And if we consider heaven as a mirror, and that Saturn, we can consider that Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto are actually learning to work together in cooperation as we are down here. And we can see more clearly that we are certainly poised for a more thoughtful and empathic unified consciousness, a great opportunity to come in the days ahead. So I've prepared a little prayer for you, but before I begin, I just want to say that amidst all of the seeming Uranian chaos and turmoil, hopefully we are finally learning as a people to give back and to consider the young people in the next 7 generations. And even amidst the seeming chaos with Neptune, the great mirror in the sky, in its home sign of Pisces, what we are experiencing collectively in terms of trauma and loss is that we are not alone. And that even after physical death and the greatest Neptunian sense, we continue. We are all swimming in the same waters, and in the great scheme of things, it's our very souls that we want to preserve, and it's our very souls that are mirrored back to us from the great skies. And it's what we are learning to give back. We are learning that is what we get to keep. So let's begin with a prayer. And this is a prayer by...
Marty?
Oh, yes.
The prayer is after the music.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, sorry. Marty,
Yes.
okay, time for your dedication prayer.
Thank you, Linda, for all your hard work and your continued dedication. I'd like to say at the end of that presentation that Linda just showed us that traditional people believe that our prayers are carried to the great central sun by the eagle who flies the highest. And at the end of this prayer that I'm going to give to you, which is given to us by Wallace Black Elk, an Oglala Sioux holy man of the turn of the century and the early 20th century, I'd like to mention that at the end of the prayer, he mentions Wambli Sikala, which is a Lakota term for the young spotted eagle. And he mentioned in his teachings that those who live in right relation to Creator and live a true and honest life and do the best they can, at the end of that life, their spirit will soar to the south to meet the great central sun on the wings of the young spotted eagle. And the spotted eagle, in traditional belief, are the strongest wings of the land. If you've ever seen one, you'd know what I mean. So I'm going to begin with a prayer here. And just one moment while I get the music. And I'll get a little sage going here. Bear with me. Grandfather, grandmother, to the powers in the animal nations of the four winds, watch over the Chanumpa, grandmother earth, and the people, our forefathers and our elders, the little ones and the unborn. Lean close to the earth, that you may hear the voice I send you, towards where the sun goes down. A relative I am of you, the great eagle of power. Behold, give me the eyes to see and the strength to understand that all over the earth, the faces of all living things are alike. This is my prayer, grandfather. Hear me. Aho. Tunkasila, Unkimaka, Wamakanskanya, Tatuye, Topakinlina, Daiwakie Nanke, Namakawita Kinli, Kanumpa Kinli, Ike Wikasa Hina, Una Wana Lakapi, Wikunj Kachi, Topikin Lina, Wiko Tas Tako Nisni, Hinanchapi, Isahena, Kikusye, Nejanyo, Tunkasila, Unsimalayo, Omakia yo, Mitakwe, Wayasan, Wambli, Sikala. Blessed solstice, everyone.
Thank you. you, Marty.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, our next speaker now is Bradley Naragon, New Moon Nodes, Full Moon Flavors. Welcome, Bradley. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Linda. I'll just wait for the first slide with the chart on it.
Did you want to turn your video on, please?
I'd prefer my video off, actually. If
Okay.
that's okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The January 13th Capricorn new moon is at 23 degrees Capricorn and 13 minutes. I'm using approximately a degree plus orbs for conjunctions to the planetary nodes. If I say the degree without minutes, I'm rounding up like with the Sabian symbols. On this Capricorn new moon, transiting Venus is conjunct the south nodes of Mercury and Venus at about 5 degrees Capricorn. When I say south nodes, I mean the geocentric planetary nodes. If you don't know how to calculate them, there are a nodes calculator at truenode.com. Besides Venus on the south nodes of Mercury and Venus around 5 Cap, we have Pallas Athena at 12 Aquarius, conjunct the north node of Mercury and the south node of Neptune. Transiting Pluto happens to be on Saturn's south node again at 27 Capricorn. First off, both of Mercury's nodes are activated on the new moon. From south node in Cap to the north node in Aquarius, clearly this new moon starts a moon cycle that represents a time to shift and change older, outmoded ways of thinking and relating. Blow out the cobwebs, if you will. I didn't include Mercury with the Pallas nodes conjunction, but looking at the new moon chart, you can see Mercury is 4 shy degrees behind Pallas in its conjunction with Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. So in a way, we can say that the new moon chart is repeating this nodal theme, or vice versa. If one doesn't know about or use planetary nodes, they would likely see this pattern in the Mercury-Jupiter new phase conjunction in Aquarius on this new moon. It is a time to really expand one's ways of thinking, to shift and change with new ideas and perspectives. Potential newfound objectivity. But without using the planetary nodes, one may not be aware that this exact pattern is duly emphasized by the conjunctions to the nodes of Mercury. Also, with the lunar nodes still in Gemini Sagittarius, the north node ruler Mercury is even more a signifier of our collective evolution right now. Hence the emphasis on Mercury's nodes. Jupiter and Mercury being the rulers of the lunar nodes presently, this new phase conjunction we've reached has a very different flavor than the balsamic conjunction we had just lived through leading up to the January 13th new moon. New ideas. This type of new moon right on the heels of the Great Conjunction, the first new moon since the Great Conjunction. So it's very interesting to see this new moon chart represent such an emphasis that this is a time for fresh ideas, fresh ways of thinking about the present. The conjunction of transiting Venus to the south nodes of Mercury and Venus in Capricorn represents this feeling and attraction to norms, personal structures in an individual's life, which generate a sense of emotional consistency and normality that we need to function and survive, but which do grow rigid and limiting to new ways of thinking. There are certain conditioned behaviors and ways of relating to ourselves and others, Venus and South Node of Venus in Capricorn, which at this time are evidently restricting one's capacity to love, or at best, the way one has restructured their own consciousness and relationship to their self leading up to this time allows one to hold space for the winds of change to blow love into the heart. Of course, the Saturn-Jupiter-Mercury conjunction is squaring off to the explosive Mars-Uranus balsamic conjunction in Taurus. It's needless to say that things will be sparking off with this new moon. Without the planetary nodes, would you have noticed that Pallas Athena's position is very significant, being conjunct the south node of Neptune in Aquarius and the north node of Mercury in Aquarius? As evolutionary astrologers, we connect the south node of Neptune in Aquarius to the Aquarius sub-age of the Leo age in the years 9,820 to 8,730 BCE. By the way, we are using Mark Robertson's Ages and Sub-Ages, first published in Time Out of Mind, and the ones used and taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green. In our collective consciousness, we hold memories of our past when we actually did function as collectives, the genius and potential of unique individuals collaborating harmoniously within the group. And keep in mind, evolutionary astrology paradigm taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green was initially delivered to him in a dream via Swami Sri Yukteswar. Sri Yukteswar's one published book, The Holy Science, outlines his teaching on the Yuga cycles. This Yuga cycle is a 24,000-year cycle of a spiritual awareness from most aware to most ignorant and back again. If we apply the Yugas Sri Yukteswar taught to the connection to the south node of Neptune in Aquarius at this time period on Earth from 9,820 to 8,730 BCE, also known as the Aquarius sub-age of the Leo age, we'll see that this time correlates to the most recent peak of spiritual awareness on the planet, some 12,000 years ago or so. The collective consciousness is presently linked to this time period, and since this peak, humanity had been on a downturn towards most ignorance, which peaked around 550 in the Common Era. Ignorance, of course, expressing in forms of slavery, oppression, hate, genocide, patriarchal domination and conquest, violence, war, greed, etc., etc. The south node of Neptune, connected with this time past, is very highlighted in 2021 for the entire year, and it starts with this Pallas Athena conjunction to it on January 13th, new moon. Next slide, thanks. On January 28th, we have reached the full moon in Leo. The sun now in Aquarius, conjunct Jupiter at 10 Aquarius. And again, this is very close to the south node of Neptune. This Sun-Jupiter conjunction on the full moon brings to light the meaning of Pallas Athena on this Neptune south node at the new moon. Pallas, she is bringing this strategic wisdom, which is connected to this past genius in humanity during our last age of spiritual enlightenment. These strategies now blow up, expanding and rippling out through the collective with the light of the Leo full moon. This wisdom will likely be connected to nurturance and self-care as the moon is conjunct asteroid Hygeia. At this time, when the pandemic is hopefully turning a corner for the better with the distribution of vaccines, it is interesting to think that while Hygeia's father gave people remedies for sickness, Hygeia did not. Instead, she taught prevention. And of course, the teacher Jupiter is conjunct the sun here in opposition to Hygeia and the moon. So again, we have this repeating theme of teaching and learning some forgotten healing wisdom. How am I doing on time?
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, excellent. So You weren't really supposed to be able to read all my little side notes there, but maybe you can, and they're fun. And if you could flip to the next slide, that would be great. Obviously, we don't have time here to go through all of these. I'll likely be posting some in the future, so if you follow me, you can see and watch then. And here we come to the Aquarius new moon on February 11th. Happens to be at 23 degrees and 16 minutes Aquarius. And again, immediately, you can see why I've started to emphasize the south node of Neptune so much this year. And besides the fact that Saturn's going to be stationing on this south node of Neptune for a very long time, the second new moon, it's also highlighted with a Jupiter-Venus conjunction right on it. In the previous lunation, that symbolized these fresh awarenesses linked to spiritual collective wisdom of our past. This lunation highlights the sharing of these epiphanies and revelations and downloads. This may even be a time where we're reclaiming and rediscovering some of our lost culture that kind of got stamped out through a culture of fear taking over. Meanwhile, transiting Pluto's still conjunct the transiting south nodes of Venus and Saturn in Capricorn on this new moon. So it's going to feel a little bit like we want to get on the light rail, but we're walking in a marsh, waist high in swampy water. The karmic weight of the conditions of this reality and what's led up to this now is still slowing us down. And so what happens when these two dynamics interface as profoundly as they're going to be in the first 2 months of this year? And that's all I have for today, and I'll leave you at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bradley. Thanks. Okay, our next speaker is Sarah DeHaven with The Value of Willful Evolution, Reflections on 2020 and the Years to Come. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks, everybody, for having me here. It's a pretty big honor to be talking among so many amazing astrologers. Let's not screw it up, Sarah. All right, so yeah, 2020 was a pretty pivotal year for all of us. It was also a year of culmination. From what I understand, if you want to go to the next slide, you can go right through them there, Linda. That'll probably help me get on track. So here are just some headlines from the year. What I want to highlight with this is just what's been happening in the physical realm, in the Saturnian realm, and the Capricornian realm this year from a business standpoint. Interesting that a lot of small businesses, as a result of what has happened, have been shut down or forced to severely cut their ability to generate income. And then we also noticed that billionaires are richer than ever this year. Record profits. Can you go to the next slide, Linda? And so it's not just that, though. We're also seeing, for the first time ever, the commodification of water. This is strange, very strange, given the Capricorn energies and the fact that we're like, with Pluto still in the last decan of Capricorn on a soul level as far as collective goes, and the concepts of the dark side and traversing the underworld with Pluto, we're seeing right now, in a time with Uranus being in Taurus, some pretty like interesting events unfolding as far as, again, water becoming commodified. Famines are higher than ever. And it looks, with what's going into the next year, that food scarcity may continue to be a thing. It's interesting that water is becoming commodified in a time where resource management may be more precarious than ever. Can you go to the next slide, Linda? But not only that, there's more. this year has also showed the response to the lockdowns has showed how our children are being affected as well. This is just one headline here that shows the results of how we've managed the situation and how children are actually deteriorating on a mental emotional level because of the isolation. And then I also wanted to note this interesting graphic that I've seen recently that speaks about what has been happening, not as a result of the lockdown, but it's definitely been amplified due to the response. Can you go to the next slide, Linda? Yeah, so here's my point with all of this. At a time with Pluto being in the last decan, Saturn and Jupiter moving into a new phase from Pluto into air signs, it's interesting to consider that new phase of Jupiter and Saturn whilst in air, while Pluto's still in Earth, before Pluto eventually in, 2024, moves into air, during a time with Uranus being in an Earth sign, not happy really, Aquarius energy, Uranian energy, and Taurus. From what I can tell, there's this massive externalization of the threat that we're facing to a point where I feel like in the consensus, at least, it seems as though individuals aren't necessarily understanding root causal factors and root causal solutions, as a result of understanding these factors. And part of the clues to this are, yes, we're seeing climate change. Yes, we do need to social distance. These things make sense. It's not, we want to be considerate of everyone as far as their safety and health goes. But part of where we're going, if we're not rooting into the body, if we're not coming back into sovereignty from within and understanding our pathologies and our own ways of healing, dealing with our immune system on a psychic level, we may, when Pluto and Uranus go into air, dissociate further. And with the transhumanist agenda on the horizon, this may not go to our favor as far as evolution is concerned. We may regress evolutionarily, we may even stagnate. So some of the things that I've noticed as root causal factors are distortions of weak expression of yin and yang. So we could say the genders, the Capricorn Cancer axis, we're seeing distortions in that. On a collective level, I'm noticing in all stages of development, because of the way the consensus is operating, refusal and fear to face the true countenance of the inner self, which is in psychological terms, autophobia. And also choosing the infantile self over the adult self, transference of self-determination onto de facto parental figures in the form of, could be government or other people, leaders. From what I can tell, with Uranus and Taurus, from what I can see, it's so important for us to address the trauma. It's long-term memory, Uranus, right? And the body knows that we're traumatized. The body will always remember, regardless of where we're at mentally, emotionally, what we're focusing on. The body holds on to everything. We can come into this life with trauma, as Kim Marie Weimer was talking about yesterday, 89 to 90% of the population, or we can experience it in this life. And so from what I can tell with where things are going, what I just wanted to share with people is the value in individuation. And part of what comes from that, no matter what stage you're at in evolution, even spirituated, we must individuate by coming into our bodies. And of course, when I say must, I'm very emphatic when I talk. I got a lot of fire. So I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but at the same time, I do think it's important to consider the value of feeling on a physical, somatic level, and being very kind to ourselves in that process, because trauma hurts. It's painful for the body. We can have pains that don't make sense, but there are causal factors there. And so if you don't mind going to the next slide, Linda, I just wanted to try not to take up too much time here. I just want to get this stuff out. I know I could talk about 8,000 things, like the square between Neptune and the nodes, for instance. Some great points were brought up today. Part of bringing ourselves back into the body is the disillusionment that a lot of us are facing right now, and even the precariousness of the seeming lack of foundation that we're standing on in this world. Where are things going? Where have we come from? What's the point of all of this? There's so many different things depending on our individual journey that could be coming to the surface of our psyche, and even being felt in the body with regard to what's next. And it can feel like we don't know where things are going, but from what I could tell with the square between Neptune and the nodes, it seems that, especially when we consider the opposition with Lucifer and Vesta as well, like it's a mutable cross we're dealing with here. There seems to be a lot of benefit in being just realistic about what we've come to at this point as humans, how we're personally culpable for what we consent to as far as what we're creating collectively in this world and what we have been creating and what our ancestors have created, but also to not do this in such a way as where we're trying to cause pain to ourselves, but more to help us clean our self-actualization process so that it's more in an integrity to who it is we truly are, so that, with Hygeia being retrograde in Leo, during this grand conjunction, prevention, as Bradley was talking about, is huge with Hygeia, and a big piece of prevention with our creative self-actualization in a way of preventing, we could say, undesirable forces molding who it is we become, Saturn, so that we can mold ourselves, become self-determined, grow into the form we're called to be, will come from accepting who it is we truly are, and also accepting what's going on in the body, listening to that. So like some people, this might be a bit of almost like a non sequitur example, but sometimes you ever have to pee and you're like, oh, I can hold it in, it's about listening to your body when your body tells you to do something and trusting that. That's actually how we unlock our intuition. And that's a big piece with this Neptune square the nodes, the sextile between Pisces and Taurus. The key, or a key in that, is the trusting of our body, being able to listen to our body. That helps us tap into our intuition and to lock into higher intelligence, cosmic intelligence, in such a way where we're one with the all, but we're also incarnate in the physical realm. So from what I can tell, where things are going to come, we're going to be challenged to individuate, but to also work together, but not merge in such a way where we become a Borg cube thing, where it's like this kind of almost like inhuman collective, but more for us, from what I can tell, to really accept who we are, bring what we've got to the table, and share that with others. And so from what I can tell, if you want to go to the final slide, Linda, I'll finish up. From what I can tell, LeVar Burton, I had to put LeVar Burton in there because he's so great. And his Captain Planet shirt and his saying, it all makes sense. Like, the power is ours, right? Like, we are literally what will determine where things are going. And with the law of freedom, which is a principle of natural law presented by Mark Passio, he's an occultist researcher. I love this concept because I think of it logically and it makes sense that freedom and morality are directly proportional. So we will know if we're free the more that we see morality increase. The more we see people living from their conscience and their ethics, because of course, Sagittarius energy, morality, it is very subjective, but there is kind of like a logic to it, in the sense of when we tap into our conscience, we know what's right. And we'll see as morality declines, freedom declining, right? So it's really important to know that if we're still seeing tyranny and slavery, we got work to do. And it's okay. It's not about blame. It's just about doing what we can to live our lives. And again, with Hygeia and being in Leo, it's such an important thing to remember too, with our hygiene, our self-actualization hygiene, to allow ourselves to live from the heart as well during this time. And so, that's just the gate from, and I'll finish up here. That's just the gate we're embarking on from this grand conjunction. Things will change. The energy is always in flux and things will change. And as the energies change, we'll adapt. And from what I can tell with Uranus and Taurus, it seems living in the moment, trusting our body, and allowing ourselves to develop into philosophy that, to further develop our own philosophy as far as what truth is to us, but also in such a way that is socially aware. Saturn, you know, we can expand in a way that is individuating, but also humanitarian, innovative, and of benefit not just to humans, but to all beings on the planet, the plants, animals, and the water. So that's just what I wanted to share today, and I hope I made sense. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, Stacie Pazura, showing yourself. Hi there, Stacie.
Hello, thank you for having me. Very thank you. And to Sarah, when you're like, I hope I made sense. Oh my, you made so much sense. I got a lot out of that. So anyhow, so I'm speaking, I'm sorry, I'm a little hoarse. I'm speaking today on the topic of showing yourself, and this really is rooted in the individuation process. Since we have all of this Aquarian energy that is coming into play, I feel that it's an important thing to sort of address. You know, the individuation process, when we are created as a soul by our source, we are, there is an intention that is embedded within us. We are born as souls with a blueprint. And the whole point of incarnating all of these times is to get it, you know, to manifest it. That's the whole journey. So one of the things, you know, so the individuation process is correlating, it correlates to Uranus, 11th house, Aquarius. And, you know, this is tied to the higher mind, the subconscious mind, where we not only hold our long-term memories that can stem from past lives and even dictate current behavior if there's been trauma, but it also holds the blueprint of where we're going. And so part of the necessary process of evolution is that we have to come to a point where, you know, it's like in the beginning, the world teaches you, right? You learn how to live in the world. But then you progressively get to a point where that blueprint is wanting to, you know, kind of be in the forefront. And through Uranus, through Aquarius, through the 11th house, I think I said 8th house before, I'm sorry if I did. 11th house, this is a natural process in consciousness where we will be given promptings and visions and snapshots and directions and signposts that just come out of nowhere. We don't try to get it, it just happens. And the one thing that you want to pay attention to is when these things repeat, when you're not trying to repeat them consciously, but they keep coming into your mind. You want to pay attention because those things are telling you this is something to act upon. Go there, do this. And you know, it can be a scary process because you don't know where you're going. It can seem like it's coming out of nowhere. It has no integration with your present reality. And so it takes a real act of courage. Now, once you do act, if you act, then you will be led into different experiences. Some people will find themselves just immediately attracting perhaps a community of like mind where they, you know, oh, we see your individuality and they support you. And, you know, it's a really gentle process. It's a fun, creative, non-stress process. But, and this is really what my talk is getting to. There's another potential, and this is what I'm getting to. And that is when you follow those Uranian promptings to pursue something and you don't know where you're going, it can lead you into a place where your environment is not accepting of you. The key is to listen to the promptings, to try and do the best that you can, and to have courage. You may find yourself in a group where this work is meant to play out, where they don't support you. And this leads to the important teaching that sometimes you need to be a group of one if you're truly going to commit to the individuation process. It's important to engage in it, and if you have to do it alone, do it. So be it. So I kind of wanted to share a story of a client that I had a few years ago who I feel really exemplified this process of going through this as a group of one. So she was, it was kind of later in life. She was having her first Saturn return. She had developed this incredible capacity to sort of, I don't know what the word is, just compensate in any social situation where she could survive it. But inwardly, all of this time, she felt like, this isn't me, I'm hiding myself. Who I am is my secret. But she had such a fear of persecution and rejection, stemming from past life experiences. Remember, your Uranus is long-term memory, right? We can sometimes tune into these past life traumas. And she was definitely caught up in that. And so the first part of her life was really just spent working on this ability to compensate so that she could just feel safe. And as Jeffrey Wolf Green would often teach, when you do this kind of thing, if it's not in alignment with your individuality, you're just marking time. That's it. You're just marking time. And this person, she really, the internal pressure just started to build to where she could not ignore it anymore. It didn't matter if everyone loved her. It didn't matter. Something was missing. She wasn't growing. She knew that there was more to life than this. And, she went through, a lot of introspection and finally made an inner commitment that, I want to spiritualize. And in order to do this, I have to remember who I am. And right now I don't know who I am because I'm performing for people all the time. And I haven't had time to explore it. And so now it's time to break that off, to concentrate on me. And so the first thing she did was she found an area of work that was in a natural alignment with her intrinsic capacities and her intrinsic loves, just the essence of her soul, just a work that would, when they say, when you do the right work, it's not work, it's play. So she found a situation like this, but she found herself in a situation where her coworkers, they were a very tight-knit group, great people, wonderful people, but they had a little group and they had a little consensus among them, and they thought certain ways. They all sort of thought the same. And what she found, like, as much as she wanted to be accepted, she found that she couldn't play along, because a lot of her coworkers, their whole vehicle for social bonding was to gossip. And she couldn't do it. And so she would remove herself from them. During the lunch hours, they would all congregate and she would go off and spend her lunch times alone. And then, of course, the group started thinking, well, that must be a sign that she doesn't want to be our friend. And so they took offense. And so there was just this incredible dynamic of alienation. And so, this woman, she recounted that she would, in the beginning stages, she would literally go home from work bawling her eyes out. And the next morning, as she was driving into work, she would be bawling her eyes out because she hated the alienation. It was so hard. She was used to playing the game where she didn't have to feel that pressure, but she was allowing herself to dive in and just, face what's real. And it took a long time for her. And I really want to stress this. It's not always going to be immediate. I think, for her, it was about 3 years where she just had a constant interface of feeling like she didn't fit in, but having such a loyalty to her own inner commitment to spiritualize and to find herself and to show herself. that she walked into the fire every single day. And over time, you know, after the initial period of, you know, I guess you could call it like a temptation, a challenge period, like, do you really want to do this? You know, when you pass the test, things lighten up a little bit, and things shifted for her, where these coworkers who had projected on her so intensely and just you know, all that stuff, all the alienation, they started to actually appreciate her for exactly her quirks, like the things that they used to gossip about. They started to find them endearing. And not only that, but they, you know, because this woman had kept her focus so firmly on, you know, what these Uranian messages were sending her, and following the path and trusting it. All of these things started to emerge within her, where she started to have her own ideas. Like, she would be on the job, and, you know, in every job, there's always a protocol, right? But she was receiving ideas that were beyond it. And it came to a point where she really realized that she realized her value in that grouping, the grouping that she felt like she was so excluded from. And because of her perseverance, and because, like, literally it took courage for her to stick through this every single day. Like, okay, I'm gonna listen to myself. I'm gonna tune in spite of all of the social pressure. And because of that, she got so good at her job. She got really good at her job. And she started to have insights that even the veterans weren't having. So, and of course, that's going to give her confidence. And see, that is what happens when you follow the individuating path. There comes a point where once you uncover your individual self and you're having the courage to act on it, the universe conspires with you. And things that you didn't predict, you know, they happen. Things that you could never predict. And for her, this allowed her to just really, like, recover a sense of fundamental confidence in who she is as a person. Because again, I want to remind it that the story started out with a person who hadn't even tried. She was so caught up into compensation, she hadn't even tried. And it was because she just gave herself to this Uranian process of individuation, it created an evolutionary leap for her. And she accomplished so much ground in such little time. And she continues even today. You know, it changed her life. And so for those of you who can relate to this kind of story, and those of you who feel like, oh, there's something missing, or, you know, there's something that I haven't really found myself, I encourage you to embrace this process and to really have courage. And namaste. That's it.
Thank you, Stacie. Okay, our next speaker is Steve Wolfson with Sanity Within the Whirlwind. Go ahead, Steve.
Hello, are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So yesterday, the words for me to talk about here came to me in a flash. So for the first time in my life, I'm actually going to read a talk. I'm going to try to keep contact with the camera so I'm not distracted. While I was sitting here, I want to add a piece that I hadn't thought about, which is a recent piece from Matt Kahn, a person who has been very important in my life in the last number of years. It's about despair, but it doesn't have to be as extreme as despair. It can simply be feeling very upset about what's going on in the world, uncertain and so forth. I feel this is very important because many of us are in this process that's about to be described that we don't even know we're in. Despair is not you giving up on you. It's the ego beginning to let go. giving you the brand new opportunity of getting to know yourself beyond the threshold of conditioning. In other words, who you truly are. Since you have spent more human time in conditioning, and because awakened consciousness always exists as a timeless reality, you will go through what feels like an existential death as you grieve the patterning that is being healed that can feel like the end of you, at least as you have known you. While so many dream of the day such patterning will be gone, the moment it actually begins to dissolve feels more like death and despair than as an unlikely foreshadowing of the rebirth that is in progress. This is why you are here learning to hold loving space for such a sacred process. Now, those are Matt's words. My words. This talk is for people who feel in their bones the difficulties and challenges that lie ahead, the sense of uncertainty and not knowing, who wish to respond with maturity, kindness, sensitivity, in times that seem to be breeding divisiveness, denial, delusion, upset, frustration. And I will ad lib to this. These are actually what we're seeing around us, signs of the waking up that's going on, even though it appears to be the exact opposite of that, because it is putting into consciousness and awareness the garbage, the crap that is below the surface that needs to come out so that it can be accepted and healed. I see this as an opportunity to deepen my relationship with deeper, darker, disowned, and self-abandoned places within myself. Doing this is often not fun, often does not feel good. There's a strong conditioned tendency to want to run the other way, to quickly change the subject when the smallest scent of this begins rearing its head. To me, the biggest issue in 2020 has been the extent of the change. In other words, phenomenal amount of change. Looking at transits for the end of 20 and on into 21 and beyond, the extent of the change seems it will be accelerating even more, faster, and deeper. The very concept of what reality is and who and what I am is under intense shift. Shifts of this speed and depth are not easy for the majority of humans. One of the great cries of the moment seems to be, when are we getting back to normal? The vaccine, normal, normal. Not to make fun of it. My feeling is what we have collectively called normal is over. It died. It's no longer relevant. It's gone as far as it can. Not only is a vast shift necessary for collective ongoing survival, it is being forced into action by the events that are occurring. It's not going to be like it was. And some parts of that shifting, where we feel very uncertain, scared, angry, confused, shut down, lost, will be painful at times. My experience is there are limits to how much the human psyche can absorb and integrate at one time. The extent of change at hand and what's approaching is at times beyond the capacity to integrate. What can't be integrated is experienced as trauma. I view it as more current traveling down the circuits of the human nervous system than the nerves, the wiring, are capable of carrying at any given time. If house wiring is designed for 20 amps of current and 30 or 40 amps start flowing through the wire, the wire will melt and might start a fire. This is why we have circuit breakers on our electric circuits. A timeout is like a circuit breaker. Another analogy that came to mind is rivers that flood after a heavy spring snow melt. The amount of water flowing is beyond the capacity of the river to contain the flow within its established banks. The end result is water flowing everywhere, floods, that literally change the landscape. In a severe flood, much of what we call damage occurs. From the human perspective, this is seen as bad and painful. The cry is for things to get back to normal ASAP. From life's perspective, this is change. It's not bad or painful. It has side effects for established life forms, certainly, but it fosters change, and change can only arise when it's necessary. We people experience it as traumatic because it's unexpected change that severely affects the course of one's life in ways that were not consciously desired. And yet it happens. This can only happen when change is a necessary part of a soul journey. From the human perspective, the soul's necessities at times are messy, unwanted, and frankly, a royal pain in the butt. From the soul's perspective, there come moments when it's time to step forward, where what has been, if continued, would breed stagnation, and life doesn't allow this and simply adjusts. From our human perspective, we have every right to take exactly as much time and circumstance as we need to adjust to the change that enters our life. This is the root of the process we call grief. No matter how much I simply want to move on and get on with it, it's a process. And the process entails me feeling everything that comes up in me, what I consider good and desirable, bad, or indifferent. The hardest part for me is embracing the very emotions I most dislike and least want to feel, the ones I would do almost anything to get rid of, to get away from. It turns out, somewhat ironically, that freedom, release, and movement come through the gradually embracing what I have experienced, all of this. It turns out it's a soul process. I have no control over how long it's going to take or how deeply it cuts. It will be over when it is over. I have no way to know when that's going to be, and there's not a lot I can do to make it go any faster because it goes at the pace that it's going at. I don't have to needlessly suffer. I can check out and take a break for a while, but I need to learn that being on a break doesn't mean the process is over. When that period of time out is over, I'm going back yet again into what I have not processed or accepted, because that is how I integrate what has occurred. Like breathing in and out. I take in a breath, it affects me. I breathe it out, I take in another breath, and this repeats over and over until at some point this process has reached completion. But don't worry, this is saying humorously, another one won't be long in arriving. The pace of change, I feel, is rapidly accelerating. The more I'm able to accept what's going on and that it's good and necessary, even when uncomfortable, the more I'm able to experience and see that I'm living in ways aligned with life's evolutionary intentions for me. Almost done. Even when I am in strong resistance to the change, I am still evolving. This we don't understand often, because the process is carrying out what intends, regardless of whether I am cooperating or feeling resistant. An advantage of learning to cooperate is, in all, it's just less painful to let the process do what it's going to do. I experience the more aware I am of the process while in action, the more in inner ease I can feel with it. There's a certain amount of feeling uncomfortable that is simply inherent. The more comfortable I can become with feeling uncomfortable, the more I experience feeling aligned with this process. It reminds me of childbirth. Few describe childbirth as fun. Most describe it as profound. I am rebirthing, Our human collective is rebirthing. Our planet is rebirthing. It is and will be profound. Many will have difficult moments as it's not the way many of us have been trained to look at life. I feel our personal struggles help us to have greater compassion for the struggle of others as we learn to be compassionate with ourselves. And as these rapid changes will permeate the lives of most of us. That's it.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Okay, our next speaker is Tara All, 2021 Mercury retrograde, all in air signs. Hello there, Tara.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Go ahead.
It's nice to be here with you, whether you're tuning in now or later. So yes, I want to talk about Mercury, and I wasn't able to listen to everyone that came before me, but Bradley definitely dug into the Mercury effect. And I'm going to specifically talk about 2021 Mercury retrograde, but Mercury does have its fingerprints over a lot of stuff going on in 2021. If you look at the eclipses, oftentimes Mercury or the nodes are involved. And of course, the nodes being the North Node in Gemini, that ties Mercury in as well. So it's all over the place. And when I think about Mercury, and people have talked a lot about, or earlier about, I think someone talked about wiring, circuitry. I think, Steve, it was just you before. But Mercury to me is our wiring. It represents how everything is connected inside our bodies and between each other, our connections getting from here to there. And it's interesting to me that, and I know that Mercury retrograde tends to come in clusters of elements, right? So last year it was all in the water signs, but it retrograded back into other elements. This year, meaning 2021, it's 100% air. It does not go back into any other element during those periods, which to me, and I don't know how often that happens. I'm not a big researcher, and I Googled a little bit, but didn't find anything right away. So maybe it happens all the time, but regardless, I feel like it's important. This year, I mean, we know it's a new air era already with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. We have influence of Uranus continuing on through the year. We have all this Mercury stuff. And then we have all three Mercury retrogrades at air signs. And I'm thinking, wow, we are literally going through a rebooting or a reprogramming. And I mean, I'm going to say all the way down to our cells, but definitely with Mercury, our minds. And when I say mind, I don't just mean the brain up in our heads. Okay. So just open that territory wide. In fact, I think partly what's happening is we're relearning what our minds are, what our minds can do, and even what our intelligence is. So this is part of it as well. All right. So, okay, here's a cool thing. So everything is for us. I believe this. Everything happening is for us. We don't always experience it this way, but it is. And truly, we're creating our reality. Another Mercury thing, right? Our perception is reality. So how are these Mercury retrogrades helping us in 2021? How does that reflect how we're helping ourselves in 2021? Mercury to me is about a bridge, right? If we really are leveling up or taking a turn on the spiral or entering this new era, rebirthing ourselves, which I think are all true, just different words for it, we need help going across the bridge. And Mercury, man, that's the one part of us and the part energetically and in mythology that can go between upper and the lower world like no other gods or goddesses can. So I feel like in this case, Mercury has our back. It's like, okay, you're going to need help getting from here to here. And that's why we see this huge Mercury influence all over the place, which is exciting to me. And of course, Mercury rules my South Node, so it doesn't take much for me to get excited about Mercury. So this, I feel, is going to be a good year. And even though 2020 has been, and I know, terribly difficult for so many of us and really pushed us in many different ways, I really do believe that we hit the end of a road or we hit a ceiling and we can't continue. So it's good. We need to do something different. How we relate to that is totally up to us. And that's, again, relationships is going to come up when we get to the Libra retrograde. Okay, so before I run myself out of time, let me just talk briefly about all three of them. So the first Mercury retrograde is going to be in Aquarius, January 30th to February 20th. And in this case, like I already mentioned, we need to work with our minds differently. But I'm thinking with the retrograde in Aquarius, we're dealing with fixed air. And, you know, we think about Aquarius as being a sign of freedom, which of course it is. And we know it can think outside the box, and it's innovative, and it helps us progress. And I mean, all these amazing, wonderful things, but it also is a sign of rigid thinking. And so when I'm thinking about Mercury retrograde, which is always an invitation to go within and re-look, reevaluate, reconsider, realign, right? Reprogram, rethink all this part within ourselves. With Aquarius, it's like, take a look at the most crystallized thoughts and beliefs you hold. And can you be really honest and do that? And this part is not comfortable for most of us. And sometimes we don't even know what those are until a moment triggers us, which, by the way, this year we got plenty of transits happen, and that'll trigger those moments where we would get face to face with, wow, do I really believe that? Do I really stand for that? Is that something I can get behind? Is that really how I want to move forward in my life? So I feel like that's a big part of this first Mercury retrograde. But also, I think the positive side of using this Aquarius energy, I mean, among lots of other positive ways, is using that rebelliousness to overthrow your own mental blocks. It's almost like, take that rebel out with yourself. Challenge yourself to be, how can I do it differently? And, you know, maybe it's not so much that you've been stuck in rigid ways. Maybe you've gone too far off on the rebellious end. You know, maybe you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater type of thing. This is a time to really stop and look and say, okay, where am I at with this? All right. So, and intolerances. I don't know why the word intolerances came. Like, look at where our intolerances are, where we're unable to continue listening and feeling because we have this wall that comes up that just says, no, that's not what I think is right. So there's like this wiggle room that comes in with Mercury retrograde, and maybe being quiet for a while. Now we're going to go into the Gemini, Gemini one, but Mercury retrograde too. It's always a great time to be quiet, you know, to reconsider how you use your words. And I'm moving into the Gemini one because Gemini has so much to do with words and language. Mercury retrograde in Gemini will be May 29th to June 22nd. And Gemini is the mutable air sign, which helps us get new perspective on things. It also helps us adapt and change, to move between different energies. So this Mercury retrograde to me is helping us reconnect the dots in new ways, literally to rewire our programming. So maybe if, you know, I'm going to make up a story here. Stacie says something to me and it upsets me. I have an immediate programming with that. Well, yeah, Stacie knows I could pick on her, so it's safe. But let's just say she does, you know, and it can happen. We do shows together. I have a choice of where I want that circuitry to run, you know, and so this is a chance for us to rethink about where A connects to B connects to C, and maybe actually A should connect to F because that's a better, you know, that's a better connection for you. So thinking about that piece. And then Gemini also is connected with language and translation. I feel like we need new words. We need new ways to share what we believe and what our experiences are, and even to modernize our myths. You know, we have so much of binary duality in our language and in our beliefs, and it comes out. And you know, let's not forget that Neptune is in Pisces, which is about unity and interconnectivity. All the strong Uranus influence is about the cohesion of opposites. So it's like shades, not this or that. Right. And so this, I feel, is another challenge when we're connecting the dots, that maybe they don't need to be so polarized. Maybe there's a way we can integrate. All right. So then the final Mercury retrograde in Libra, September 26th to October 18th. And okay, so now we're to the cardinal air sign. And a lot of what Libra does is initiate relationships or initiate interactions and exchanges with other people. But it's not just people. Libra is all relationships, our relationship with life, with art, with this object, with this thing. So just to remember, it's not just with people. But I feel that this time is really about stepping back and looking at what we're choosing to connect with and why. So not just the people you're choosing to connect with, but all the things in your life that you partner with. Do you want those to be your partner? Is that the best partner for you? Are you being the best partner? One of the things I think is most beautiful about Libra is it really is our ability to partner with life, like literally on this big scale. It's like choosing to say yes to life. Life, I'm going to be your partner. We're going to co-create, versus life is doing these things to me, which is something that, you know, our minds, and most of us were raised up that way. I mean, it's common to feel that way. Oh my gosh, listen to this thing that happened to me, right? What she said to me, you know, what they did to me kind of thing. Libra Libra in this case is a fresh gust of air that I think can clear some of that space. And I think about that Libra, right? You know, it's like a, well, it's cardinal, right? So literally it is like a fresh breeze blowing through. And also this is about friendship. What kind of friend do you want to be to others? What does it even mean to be a friend? What is, you know, some of these things I just think we need to reevaluate. We have 1 million friends on Facebook, right? Are those really your friends? And so I think this is what, and what does it mean to actually, yeah, I mean, the best way I can say is just simply, what does it mean to be a friend? And what does it mean to have a friend? And that includes being, you know, again, a friend of the planet, which of course we know is a big deal with, especially with Uranus and Taurus shaking our attention in that direction. All right, so also the natural mediator and peacemaker in Libra, you know, it asks questions. We do so much telling. Here's what I know, here's what I think, right? And we don't spend a lot of time listening and asking questions to really find out where someone's coming from, or even to leave enough space so we can like take a second to see what comes in. Steve talked about fear of not knowing. To me, we evolve through choosing not to know. It's in creating the space and saying, I don't know, that truth falls in. So to me, this last Mercury retrograde of the year, you know, it invites us to step back and evaluate how we relate with everything, people in our lives for sure. And then Libra, of course, stands for kindness. You know, there's fairness and there's cooperation. And man, we know we can all do more of that. So yeah. And on that note, I'm partnering with EA Zoom meetings has been truly one of my favorite things over the past, I don't know, Linda, maybe 5 years even. It feels like it's now been a long time. So I'm very grateful for us and Linda and everyone here. And I want to thank you for being part of this community. It's a beautiful thing that we built together, and we've got some amazing people keeping it going. So thank you so much, you guys. Many, many blessings.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Tara. Okay, our last speaker is Patricia Walsh. Go ahead, Patricia.
Hello. I'm going to change it up a little, and I think I'm closing, right? I'm the last person. Yes. Okay. So most people would probably be joining us by recording. So I'm going to ask you to, when you watch this, to enter ritual space. And even though the solstice is past, we're on the second day, we're in that kind of intimate time where the sun is standing still and turning. I'm coming from the Northern Hemisphere. So in the Northern Hemisphere, when the sun slowed down and kind of paused and goes further and further south from, again, the Northern Hemisphere, you know, ancient people would see this as a very perilous, a potentially perilous time, of course, because, you know, the crops and their survival and the cold is setting in. And it's even survived today when we say something's gone awry and we say, oh, it's gone south, right? Like something's going south. That comes from this time when the sun bends to its most southern point and then starts its return. So we're in this time now. And what I'm going to do is I want to take you through, if you want to put the first slide up, Linda, I'm just going to take you through an introduction or an honoring of different solar deities from different cultures, different directions, as we call in the 4 directions. And I'm going to take you through an inner working that's something that you can continue to work with throughout this year as the sun grows in its power. So I want to ask you to just kind of recognize that you're going to be entering ritual space. And as we call the 4 directions with each of these glorious solar deities. So can I have the next slide, please? So if you can, where you are, turn to this direction to honor this direction. And when we turn to the south, we get this story from the Aboriginal people of Australia about Yi, the creatress solar goddess. And so as we turn to the south, we honor first where the sun is declined the most to, and we're beckoning her return. So we learn from our Southern elders, these Aboriginal people, of Ye's story about how in beginning all lay in darkness and the world was not dead, it was just asleep, and it was waiting for the touch of light and spirit to fill it. And the urge of creation lay in the dream time, dreaming of what it could be. And Ye also lay asleep in the dream time, but she stirred by the creative urge's excitement, and she heard the roar of creation awakening her. And when she awoke, she opened her eyes, and the light dispelled the darkness. And she began a journey down to the now illuminated yet barren earth plane. And when her feet landed, the earth rejoiced and life started to spring forth. And first it came as the vegetation, the plants and the trees rose up to meet her radiance. And Ye was filled with joy. And then she went into the deep, dark places, the caverns, the caves where no seed would ever sprout. And there she awoke the shadows until they softened in her light, and they became twinkling little sparks of light. And those little sparks of light became the insects, and they followed Ye out of the caves to meet the plants. And then Ye went to the frozen places where the eternal ice froze even the waters, and the sea life started to awaken. And she went deep into the frozen caves of the mountains, and she awoke the animals there. And man and woman were created. And Ye retreated to the sky, but she promised all of the beings who wanted her to return that when the body dies, the eternal light spirit will always return to her in the dream time. So from Ye, we learn of the sun as the creatress goddess. And we say, "Hail, Ye in the south. We joyously welcome your gracious gifts of creativity and life itself." And if you want, you can say, "Hail, Ye." And from the south, we now turn to the west. And in the west, it's known as the birthplace of civilization as we know it today. The Fertile Crescent, modern day Iran, Iraq, Syria, a place that needs much light, although everywhere needs much light right now. And although the myths of Utu and Shamish are fragmentary, we learn from these ancient Sumerian, Babylonian myths about how Utu rises every day to illuminate the deeds of humanity and make them clear. And he gives humans the ability to rationalize and see that which is hidden. In the morning, he presides over the courts where the deeds of humans are judged. And then as he travels westward and sinks into the underworld, he judges the deeds of the souls of the dead. Utu Shamish gave the laws of civilization to the Babylonian king Hammurabi, known as the Hammurabi Code, and it remains the first written laws we know of today. And some of those things that were written down are simple yet perennial, like the sun. Unto your opponent do no evil. Unto your evildoer recompense with good. Unto your enemy let justice be done. And let not your heart be induced to evil. To the one begging alms, give food and drink. And always be helpful and be good. So from Utu, we learn about the sun as the spirit of justice and truth and righteousness. And we say, "Hail, Utu Shamish, we welcome your gift of wisdom." And now we turn to the far north, the Sami people, the Arctic, the Scandinavian, the Russian, and we learn about their goddess called Beiwei. And for them, the winter solstice, of course, marks this halfway point between the return of the sun. And the reindeer to the Sami people were much like the buffalo to the Native Americans. Reindeer provides food and milk for cheese and hides for clothes and muscle for pulling sleighs and bones and antlers for tools. And the Sami say that the creator placed a beating reindeer heart at the center of creation. And it was only the reindeer that offered her heart. Thus, all of creation is created out of love. To the Sami, Bewe, the sun goddess, is associated with the reindeer as she's the nurturer of humankind. And she's also known as the mother of humankind and the source of all souls. In one of their stories of this time, Bewe brings back the light riding across the sky in a structure made of reindeer bones and antlers. And in fact, in some Scandinavian traditions, it's the antlered doe who brings back the sun in her horns, because at solstice, it's only the female deer that still have their antlers. And during this time, the Sami people spread butter, or what they call sun's milk, on their doorways to offer sustenance for Bewe on her journey to bring back the sun. And it was also understood by and is still understood by the northern people, what a strain these long dark nights put on the soul of the people, sometimes driving some people to despair and madness. And in these times, the goddess Bewe was called upon to restore mental health for those who were afflicted by the long dark nights. Thus, she's a deity that brings renewed life to people's souls, their health as well as their environment. So from Bewe, we learn of the sun as the nurturer and the giver of hope in dark times. And we say, "Hail, Bewe. We welcome your gifts of sustenance, clarity, and hope." And now we turn to the east, where the sun rises every day, and learn about one of the most well-known solar deities, Ra, from Egypt. And as dawn breaks, Ra awakens in the east. And after being dressed, he's led on his golden barge, which slowly crosses the sky all day, giving off light and warmth. In the morning, his barge is called Majet, which means becoming strong. And at dusk, it's called Senektet, which means becoming weak. When he crosses the sky, he collects the souls of all of those people who passed during that day, but only the souls of the ones who know the words and incantations. And when he approaches the western gate, he's swallowed by Nut, the night sky goddess, and he dies and passes into the underworld, passing through this very difficult realm where he faces the 12 gates of challenges while constantly being pursued by the serpent of chaos. But he's very clever and he knows the words of magic. So he's able to pass through these gates, because if he ever failed, the world would be plunged into darkness and chaos. But each day he's reborn in the east and he completes his eternal cycle. So from Ra, we learn of the sun as birth, death, and rebirth. And we say, "Hail, Ra, we welcome your gift of immortality." And as we know, there's no light without darkness, and there's no darkness without light. And as Steve was saying, we always must honor both of these within us. And so I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and I'm going to take you through a visualization, through a little inner journey. And just take a breath as we make our awareness of the darkness expand. And I want your mind to wander back through this last year, through the times that weren't easy, where there were some hardships or some meanness or some difficulty that happened in your life. There were dark times. They happen to all of us. Maybe you were angry, depressed, you lost something, you were anxious. We should never leave these memories, these emotions in the dark because they fester there. So I ask you to go to whatever darkest memory comes to you of this passing year. Recall what happened and how you felt. Really bring it back into your awareness. Dig into that darkness. And as you allow yourself to re-feel those feelings and rethink those thoughts, whatever they were at that time, I want you to imagine that you're now in front of the central fire that's always lit at the solstice in every indigenous tradition around the world for aeons. This central fire representing the inner and the outer light. Stay with the feelings that you're feeling, but become aware of the central fire, of its warmth, of its light. Imagine that you're looking into this central fire, and out of the fire starts to form a being, a radiant being, a light being. That's your own personal solar deity. Maybe one of the ones I talked about, maybe another that comes to you. And feel this being starting to differentiate itself from the fire and making him or her known to you. Feel this being's brilliance, radiance, the warmth and the intelligence as it approaches you. And let this solar deity be with you in what you are remembering, what you are re-feeling. But let the light of this deity start to illumine this event, this memory, what it was about. This deity can shine some light on this thing that happened, this experience you had. And let the radiance of this being awaken your own inner knowing. Maybe seeing it in a way you didn't see this event before. And I'm going to ask you to commune with this being, continue in a very meditative place to commune with this solar deity, this being, letting your inner light awaken, letting this being bless you and share with you things about your own authentic spark, about your own inner light. And while you're doing that, I'm going to chant the Gayatri mantra 9 times, as is tradition. The Gayatri, she's a solar deity. She's called the mother of the Vedas. And in this mantra, we call forth the central sun, the sun behind the sun. And while I chant this, just commune with this solar deity. Om Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyaham Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayam. Om Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyaham Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyaham Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyaham Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyaham Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyaham Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyaham Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyaham Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Loka Samastada Sukhinu Bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So thank this being with the warmth of your heart, your gratitude, and thank all the solar deities that you met, that we honored, and turn quickly again to the directions. To the south, we thank ye. To the north. Wait a minute. I do that wrong. Wait, what direction? Because I'm facing west, so it's difficult for me. Right, to the south. And then we turn to the west, where we thank Utu Shamish. And then we turn to the north, where we thank Bayway. And then we turn to the east, where we thank Ra. And Mother Gayatri that pervades them all, as she is the intelligence of the sun behind the sun, divine intelligence and wisdom. May 2021 bring you much light.